Is Idaho pushing back against federal overreach? This week, ICE arrests soared nearly 800% in our state. We break down the fight to save Rainbow Bridge, and the feds are on the hunt for a killer near our Montana border. This is the Yocal, Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news you need to know in Idaho for the last week. As Idaho's bathroom law faces another federal challenge, we'll be also looking at and asking, will our efforts to protect women's privacy finally stand strong at the Supreme Court? Or will new legal attacks threaten common sense laws? Stay with us till the end to get more on that as we answer it, and to get full coverage on the important stories we're going to talk about and much more, and ensure you're the most informed Idahoan in the room. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay connected with us. Let's dive into it. ICE has made major strides in our state this year. Federal agents arrested 368 people in the first 6 months of 2025. That's a 797% jump from the same period last year, when they only made 41 arrests. Detentions at our Elmore and Jefferson County facilities tell the same story. ICE detained 416 people through June, compared to just 65 last year. That's a 540% increase, and we've already exceeded all of 2024's numbers. As for Idaho's willingness in this, Governor Little has positioned Idaho as a partner in the federal enforcement. His February executive order requires our state police and agencies to work with ICE. The legislature also passed House Bill 83, if you didn't hear about it. It gives local law enforcement needed tools to enforce immigration law. And then in June, Idaho signed a 287G agreement, letting state police transport criminal aliens directly to ICE facilities instead of releasing them back into our towns and communities. Little allocated $300,000 to cover 100 transports in that program. And yes, you might be thinking some businesses that rely on illegal labor will need to adjust, and labor costs may rise. You can't have your cake and eat it too. But with this stronger enforcement, it does mean better jobs for Idahoans, locals, people that actually live here and are citizens paying taxes. Also improved security and communities built on respect for law. After years of chaos, we're finally seeing what happens when immigration law gets enforced. And staying on the great news for our state, this week, Idaho officials reported they haven't found any Quagga mussels in our water system so far this year. The Idaho Department of Agriculture announced that 2/3 through the summer, their aggressive monitoring has turned up clean results. This brings huge relief to our farmers, hydropower operators, and anyone who depends on our water system, which you might think you don't, but if you turn on that tap, you probably do. These tiny invaders, which you might be asking why are they a threat and what do they pose? A single female can spawn up to 1 million offspring each year, way more than your rabbits can. When they establish colonies, they can clog pipes that deliver our drinking water, power our turbines, and irrigate our crops. These European pests were first discovered in Idaho in the Snake River near Twin Falls back in September of 2023. When that happened, the state immediately fought back, spending about $1.6 million on copper treatments to kill them off. Officials had collected over 200 clean samples from the affected areas this summer, and crews have inspected more than 16,000 boats at Twin Falls alone. While we need to still stay vigilant with long-term monitoring, these early results suggest our swift response may have worked. If they hold strong, we may have successfully protected the clean, flowing water systems that sustain our agriculture, power generation, and our way of life here in Idaho. And speaking of developments and heading back up into the mountains, the Idaho Transportation Department tried to slip one past us. They quietly posted online that they wanted to tear down the Rainbow Bridge, our historic 1933 landmark that spans the Payette River on Highway 55. If you've gone from Boise to McCall anytime, you have definitely driven on it. Now, there wasn't any press release, no public announcement. They just buried it in a feedback portal, hoping nobody would notice. But you did notice, especially if you listened to these episodes, and so did plenty of other Idahoans. Last year, ITD said they could preserve Rainbow Bridge as a pedestrian overlook while building a new bridge for traffic. Now they have completely flipped, claiming the bridge is too deteriorated and would cost up to $50 million to save. The public pushback, as you can probably guess, and because we're talking about it, worked. ITD extended their feedback deadline to August 10th, after facing heat for their sneaky approach. They're offering 9 replacement designs, from basic steel beams to elaborate arches that try to echo the original's beauty, the one I would probably recommend you vote for when you reach out and give them that feedback. But I will say, here is the problem that kind of bothers me a little bit. Rainbow Bridge isn't just infrastructure, and I'm not saying that it isn't just wood and steel, and there's a certain amount to that as well. It is Idaho's largest single-span arch and sits on the National Registry of Historic Places. But the part I care about a little bit more is that it represents an era when we built things to last and inspire, not just to move traffic effectively, just not that alone. Many of us have read the history stories of bureaucrats bulldozing classic architecture, all in the name of progress. We see this many a time in New York or Chicago or different areas. Just to replace it with something that's 2% more effective or efficient and 100% more depressing. If they must replace it, because all good things sadly do have to come to an end, the new bridge they do build should honor what came before it. And you can do that by looking in the description for a link that we have given that you can click to go over to give feedback on which design you would prefer. And speaking of controversy, 2 transgender students filed a federal lawsuit last Friday against Idaho's House Bill 264, challenging our state's effort to protect women's privacy in bathrooms and changing rooms. The lawsuit, which with the plaintiffs include a Boise State student who identifies as male and a University of Idaho visitor who identifies as female. They claim HB 264 violates their equal protection and privacy rights under the 14th Amendment, along with Title IX protections. Representative Barbara Earhart sponsored House Bill 264 after Idaho successfully defended a similar bill with K-12 protections in federal court. Governor Little signed the measure in April, and it took effect July 1st of this year. The law requires state universities, correction facilities, and domestic violence shelters to designate restrooms and changing rooms exclusively, that's the key word there, for males or females. The student seeks a temporary restraining order before classes begin in August of 2025. However, Earhart expects the lawsuit to fail, noting that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals already upheld Idaho's 2023 K-12 bathroom law. She emphasized that HB 264, quote, is exactly like that, just for higher ed, end quote. Idaho continues to defend common sense protections, as we see here, that acknowledge the reality that we are made male and female, while also ensuring women's safety and privacy in vulnerable spaces. These lawsuits sadly represent an ongoing attempt to override and struggle with the cultural issues, the basic protections that our state has worked very hard to establish here in Idaho. Hey, did you enjoy that story? Was it informative, and did you even know that a bill like that was passed? If not, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe button /follow to help us stay connected with you and reach more folks who love Idaho just like yourself. And then going to a little bit of a tragic note in the Treasure Valley. This last week, a tragic plane crash in Nampa last Sunday evening took the lives of a young family that called our state home. Brandon Leroy, 43, his wife Justine, 30, and their 23-month-old son Paxton all died when their small aircraft went down in a residential neighborhood near the Nampa airport. Brandon devoted his career to helping others, first as a firefighter and paramedic, then a nurse, and finally as a nurse anesthesiologist. His cousin Jeremiah described him as someone who was, quote, calm, capable, and completely present, end quote, during a crisis. While the loss devastates everyone who knew them, the Leroy family's strong Christian faith shined through their grief. Jeremiah Leroy shared that despite their heartbreak, quote, we are not without hope. Quoting Jesus' words, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. The family looks forward to the day that they will be reunited with Brandon, Justine, and Paxton. Quote, when every tear will be wiped away and joy will flow unbroken once more. For believers, death doesn't get the final word. As Jeremiah concluded, their loved ones now rest, quote, absent from the body, but present with the Lord. The police continue to investigate what caused the crash. And speaking of tragedy, the theme of where we're at the moment, a tragic shooting in Montana continues to impact the Northwest as authorities search for the gunmen who killed the 4 people at a bar in Anaconda, Montana. Last Friday morning, a 45-year-old Michael Paul Brown walked into the Owl Barn around 10:30 a.m. and opened fire with a rifle, killing the bartender and 3 patrons. Brown, an Army veteran who lived next door to the bar, fled the scene in his underwear, but later stole a vehicle with camping gear and clothes. The victims were all well-known locals, and Brown was a regular at the bar where everyone knew each other's names. As for the reaction, Montana Governor Greg Gianforte has made finding Brown the state's highest priority, with over 3 dozen law enforcement agencies now searching the mountainous wilderness around Anaconda. The town sits about 22 miles northwest of Idaho Falls, roughly a 4-hour drive to give you some perspective. In conclusion, authorities warn Brown remains armed and extremely dangerous. Anyone who spots him should call 911 immediately and not approach him. This senseless act has deeply impacted a tight-knit town and reminds us how quickly evil can strike anywhere. Has the show been valuable for you, or have you not heard about any of these stories? If so, don't hesitate to share it. Your shares help us keep you and others informed about what's happening in Idaho. And going a little bit more nationally, the Trump administration moved quickly this week to protect unborn lives through a new Veterans Affairs rule that bans nearly all abortions at VA facilities. The proposed policy reverses Biden's 2022 expansion and limits abortion to cases where a doctor certifies the mother's life faces immediate danger. Under Biden's rule, the VA provided abortions for rape, incest, and broad health concerns that Republicans argued exceeded federal law. The new restrictions eliminate this coverage and end abortion counseling that veterans could previously access. You might be immediately thinking on this, why is this any different than other restrictions? The courts are just going to block it. There's a significant part about this due to federal authority being streamlined in the process. Unlike state-level battles that face court challenges, which we are all too familiar with, the Trump team can directly control military healthcare policy. This eliminates the complex legal fights we see with civilian restrictions. Now, the numbers on this kind of tell a little bit of a story. Only 88 abortions occurred in the first year under Biden's expanded policy. Of these, 64 were for health reasons that lawmakers said went beyond life-threatening situations required by federal law. House Veteran Affairs Committee Mike Bost called the change a return to, quote, settled law, end quote, emphasizing that taxpayer dollars shouldn't fund abortions. The 30-day comment period runs through September 30th, meaning the ban could take effect by late fall. In conclusion, this represents the administration's commitment to defending life wherever federal authority permits, building on the foundation established by the Dobbs decision. And staying in the topic of medical, and in something that many Idahoans love to talk about, vaccines, new CDC data proves what we've already known here in Idaho for years. Parents across America are waking up and asking hard questions about vaccines. The feds released numbers last week showing vaccine exemptions jumped nationwide to 3.6%, up from 3.3% the year before. I know it's a small number, but when you have a massive nation like ours, that's a pretty big jump. But here's how it relates to us here in Idaho. Idaho still leads the nation with 15.4% of kindergartens having exemptions. Utah following just behind us at 10.3%. As you probably all well know, for years critics have warned us about disease outbreaks that never really came. Now 36 states and D.C. saw exemptions rise, with 17 states hitting over 5%. Parents nationwide are finally exercising their God-given authority to make medical decisions for their families. RFK Jr. visited us last month and called Idaho the home of medical freedom. Governor Brad Little also declared August as Keep Idaho Healthy Month, noting how we are, quote, proudly leading the nation, end quote, in the MAHA movement. We also passed the Medical Freedom Act this year, banning vaccine requirements for employment or services. While other states debate these freedoms and go back and forth on vaccines, we've been living it here in Idaho for some time. The CDC now says vaccine decisions are, quote, personal, end quote, and parents should consult their doctors. Idaho parents have been doing exactly that all along, thinking for themselves instead of bureaucrats to protect their children. We've come to the end of the Midweek Report. I know it was so quick. If you need more, go check out our Substack, where we cover more topics than what we can fit in here. But I want to thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, check out other content on our YouTube channel and social media sites. We actually opened up an Instagram, so we have that now. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us by email or on Twitter by tweeting us at Local Yocal Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.